All right. Hello, Dzień dobry. Thank you for joining me today. Today, as a reference point, is the weird day in the end of May where it was 90 degrees yesterday, and now it's snowing in outside currently, snowing and raining at the same time, I think. Is this, you are originally from Poland? As the weather changes quickly in Poland as it does here in Denver?
No, it doesn't. I have never seen that though, so.
It's completely new. And we've got a connection. I don't think we've ever actually met in person, but I've talked to you multiple times online. You've done mentor work for the women in our program before, which I'm really appreciative of. And then I'm also feel very connected to you because you're from Poland and my wife is from Poland. And so I wanted to kind of start there and ask you about your backstory in Poland before you came to America. What was your life like there?
So I'm from Poland, from Wrocław. How I ended up here, I used to play, I'm 6'5". So I used to play basketball, and many years ago, one of the coaches here in the United States kind of saw me playing for Polish national team, and thought I'd be good here. So he recruited me, and I came to United States. So yeah, my life in Poland before I came, since I was 12, was about basketball. I think I was about 6'1" when I was 12. So that was put to, in sports to meet other tall girls and boys, and then end up moving to United States and playing basketball. And I met my husband here, so I ended up staying.
With that, in Poland, growing up in Poland, I think Americans are very ignorant in a lot of different areas of the world. And I certainly was the first time I visited my wife in Poland, and it was different than I had imagined. Anyways, what was Poland when you were growing up there? My wife's from a block of apartments and kind of communal living in a lot of different ways. What was kind of your childhood there like?
So I remember Poland, before 1989. 1989 obviously was where the Berlin Wall came down, and kind of everything changed. So yes, it was different than what's there in 2015. So my life was, my parents, my father was a doctor, he was a pediatrician. My mom, they both went to college. My mom worked for a government agency. So you do hear stories that it was tough, it was different. Definitely, I as a kid never experienced that, because what my parents were doing, and when you 7, 8, 10, just the kids, they shield you from the worries of. In 1981, we had the martial law. That I remember that day, actually it was Sunday, and I remember my father walking in with tears in his eyes, because he didn't know what was gonna happen. I was like a kid, not understanding, but I specifically remembered that day, and what happened. And so Solidarność, I guess, start kind of moving in, and the changes again because of my parents. And when I start playing basketball and playing for national team and traveling, I have to say that my life was less, I guess, easier than for many, where you had to wait like in line to buy meat, or you had to wait in line to buy shoes and stuff, and you hear that all the time. And then when I went to United States in 1991, long time ago, it was right in between the 89 that when everything started changing. It's so going back, it is a huge difference. For better or worse, I think it's for better, but it depends where you sit, as far as in 1980s, before, I guess there's more I'm not going to say communism, but socialism, where people weren't taken care of. When after that, everybody, so you just kind of talk, depending who you talk to, they have a different, I guess, opinions. And but yeah, so that was my life. Like I said, I loved my life in Poland. I have to say, before I left, I loved. I played basketball. You know, I never had like worry. I actually was about to get an apartment from my club right before I left. You know, people knew me. I was on TV. So, you know, so it's really not very comparable to like the normal life, you know, that it was. And then I left, which was hard. But yeah, I mean, I still love Poland, go back, and I'm a little jealous. Then you go there for a year.
Yeah, my wife's childhood versus my childhood, it's very interesting to see the differences because she talks about the same things as she does remember the kind of negative parts is she remembers that people had money, but there wasn't things in the store. So they're waiting in line for toilet paper or bananas or whatever. And she always tells a story of her dad one time hearing that they were going to have washing machines in the city. And so he went and slept overnight to get in line for this washing machine to
That
buy
is,
it. And when
yeah,
he came back with a rug and a bike. And his mom's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "This is what they had, so I bought it." And so that's kind of the negative part. But the positive part was when you have this kind of apartment style living and a lot of people close together, the people were, and they stayed in the apartments which they owned. They stayed in them for long periods of time. And so everyone in her kind of block of flats knew each other. The parents all knew each other. They kind of communally raised the kids, and they felt safe going around her neighborhood and playing outside till all hours. And so there's not really an equivalency, I think, in America for something like.
no, yeah, I agree. I mean, it was, yeah, people, the one thing I've noticed here, people move here all the time, you know, for job. And then like my parents, once my father got his job, you know, they went through the war, and, you know, they're probably a little old. My dad passed away. My mom is 86. So they kind of had to, you know, my father was like a refugee almost after the war with his family. So they moved around. But once they moved, and he got a job as a doctor where he stayed there for like 50 years. My mom is still there. And then, yeah, all the people, when I go back, you know, they're still there. You know, the younger one have now tendency more to move for jobs, because if it depends if it's a smaller town. But yeah, I mean, it is different where, you know, here in the United States, people like, you hardly ever see that. You know, so you're right. And then, yeah, that's something that, you know, I do miss. I still have my friends from high school, which was a long time ago, but they're still in the same city. When I go back, you know, but they're still there. They haven't moved away. So when I go and see them, I feel like 20 years young, 30 years younger, you know, because we get together. And then here, you know, I had friends from college, we're still in touch, but everybody just kind of moved all over the place. And then, you know, I guess good thing there's social media for that, then but that, you know, face to face in person is just kind of lost. And, you know, I do miss that. So.
And another wonderful thing that I love about Poland is, and I think that's part of that, is people typically, because they're not in America, I feel that, yeah, that's your goal, is to kind of move to bigger and bigger and better and out and follow your career and all these things. And there's wonderful aspects of that. But when we go to Poland, the people visit with each other all of the time. That's been a culture shock for my wife. They visit with each other. And can you tell me, like, if I was coming over to your mother's house, and maybe not when she's 86 currently, but 20 years ago, how would she, if we were a family and we were going over to her house, what kind of setup would she have for us as we arrive? What would that look like when you're visiting family in Poland?
Well, I mean, the number one, they're not used to my mother. You know, if I had my husband or somebody, they're not used to people staying in a hotel. You know, they're like, it doesn't matter how much space you have or what this like. Oh no, this is like, if you go to the hotel, it's like people gonna think I'm not welcoming or I'm like a mean person. So whether it's a couch, whether it's something, they'll make you stay, you know, and they will make you eat all the time. And if you don't want to eat, they will put you more food on your plate because you need to eat. So there is no such a thing like, no, I'm full, you know. So, and then you eat like 3 or 4 times a day. When you finish food, then there's coffee with cake. After this, then there is dinner. Like, well, we eat dinner midday, you know. So so yeah, it's you know, I think staying somewhere and like, no, I'm just gonna come here and then visit and go to like, it's I think my mom will be offended, you know, because I try to do that. Well, now it's with, like you said, 86, then she might be more understanding, but I still stay at home, even though the bed is too small, and there is like one bathroom, so you have like 5 people, so it's different. But there's no way that she will have any other way. So that's nice. I mean, yeah. And the same, going back to my friends, when I said 30 years, then I graduate from high school, and I go back to Wrocław, which is a bigger city. My parents live in a smaller city, a smaller town, like about 25 miles from Wrocław. And because of basketball, in the age of 11, I moved away. And initially, actually, I lived on my own. And I was renting a room in like some like old ladies, which was terrible. It was hard, and I cried every day. I was walking the street just to see people, but my father was worried about my mental health, because I was 6'1" and kids were calling me names, and I couldn't understand why. And then so he made that decision, and he told my mom, like, kids are not your toys. You can't keep them just because you want to. You have to do what's best. And so I had to go. I went on, and truly that changed who I am today, because from being somebody who I thought was a freak, I kind of changed the subject, didn't I? Here, but it's an interesting story, I think. I went and start playing basketball. Initially, it was hard. Then I moved in with after 3 months with my teammate, who is my best friend now. She's a godmother to my kids. She's been here a few times helping, and when I started playing basketball, all of a sudden, my height was useful for something. I was in the paper, so all these people that used to make fun of me wanted to be my friends. So I start feeling better about myself, and I think that whole thing just totally changed so much. And going back to being welcomed by friends, so that was a long time ago. I go back, and still the same thing. I stay with my best friend and her husband in a small flats that they have. I mean, when my kids went to see, it's like, this is it. Like, they look around, I'm like, yeah, we're all staying here. And there was like literally maybe like 400 square feet and like 7 of us, but there's no way we're gonna do any different. I go to some other friends, also from house, and there is no such a thing like spending, and then when I come there's like party from the party, welcoming party and something, and you just like hop around. So it's so awesome, and I love it because it's been such a long time, and them want to still see me and spend time with me. It's great. You don't see it that often, I guess.
I'll hop around a little bit too with this. I am not a fan, no offense to you or your culture, of Polish food. I do not love Polish food, and everybody loves Polish food. So our year in Poland will probably be good for me from a health standpoint, because I'll probably eat sparingly. But everything is prepared from scratch. A lot of meats, even like meat for breakfast, my wife's family has. What kind of Polish food do you miss? And when you go back, what do you enjoy?
So I'm going to ask you a question. Which part of Polish food do you not like?
Cabbage. Cabbage. What is it? Bigos and
Bigos.
kapuska.
Well, I know. I figure, or kaszanka, flaki.
There's some I like.
Yes,
they do.
there's some
ribs and soups.
I agree with you. Like, I miss pierogis. I like pierogis. I don't make pierogis. There's so much work, and there's certain people, the way they do it, there's just no way I can do it. There's certain dishes that my mom makes. Are they the best or whatever? They are the best from you, because it's like you have this childhood thing. This taste is, even if I try to make it, it will never be the same. And it could be simple, some kind of meats and stuff. We do have here some like a Polish store and Polish restaurant. So, even if I really wanted to have the Polish food, I guess I could make it or try to make it. So, so if it's typically the ones that take a while, like, flaki or żurek or pierogi, that's the one. But again, I have friends here in Denver area who are Polish, whose moms are here. So I sometimes put in the order. If it's like Easter or something, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this, and the draft, they make it, and My kids love pierogies, so I don't think I'm missing out that much. And I think it's changing because like we're talking about the time change of like what happened in the 80s, 90s, and 2000. You also see now less and less people have like making that food from scratch. And then it depends on the generation, because I think people used to in the 80s work till 3 p.m., right? At 3 p.m. you were done, you came home, you make dinner. But now people work till 5, 6 p.m. and then by the time, so you see this like pizza, McDonald's, and I'm like, it has changed. So I have to say, it has changed a little bit.
It really, really has. I've noticed. So the first time when I went there in 2006, I did not see like any overweight people. It was wild to me, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so much walking. You're living life that way. And my wife is from a town that's 2 hours north of Warsaw, Jadowo, Poland, which is about 25,000 people. Beautiful old castle and cobblestone streets. It's gorgeous. And people walked everywhere. Or my mother-in-law would testowa. She would walk to different grocery stores to buy produce from one and fruit, whatever, from the other, and this from this one. And she had that. She'd walk to work. She worked at the hospital in the city where she lives in. And so she lives on the 5th story of an apartment. So they have to walk up each time. And then you take out the trash and you're walking down each time. If you have a dog, you're taking that dog out each time. And so there's just kind of built into the way of life. They have a garden that's off site. So they're walking to that and managing that. And I've noticed in the last, I guess, 15 years now, that it's changing and it's becoming very westernized. And it's interesting to me because I don't want to live that way myself, but I very much romanticize a lot about those things because I see the health benefits and things like that. And so I definitely see that as now people are becoming where they're doing their jobs in different ways. They're driving a lot more now too, so they're having suburban houses and driving out to them. And so that is interesting to see that change.
Yeah, I mean, when we were growing up, there was no cell phones. There was no computers. I remember there was 2 channels or 3 on TV, and I was only allowed to be watching like Dobranocka or whatever, at 7 p.m. for 15 minutes. So, we spent our time outside running and doing stuff. So, nobody was staying home because there's nothing to do. You want to hang out with your friends. And now, because of the technology and everything, you go, and when I see there's no kids outside, there's like cars parked everywhere. Even if they wanted to play anymore, there is no even the space. There's cars everywhere, So it is different. And yeah, and I think that type of food, even when you go to school and you can buy like the chips, that's so what you can see the change. My father he was a pediatrician, so he will always point that out and tell the parents, "Oh my, you can't feed them chips all the time." That's why but it was easy. It was easier to make that sometimes the food from scratch, So.
So then take me to, well, first one thing I would like to know is your English. Were you learning English at the time in Poland? My wife, I think, is a little younger than you, and she started doing English like when she was in elementary school, but her parents' generation, which obviously were older than you, they were speaking Russian or learning Russian at that time. When did you start your English?
So I went through mostly, I was taking Russian since I think 4th grade through actually through the end of high school. We did have, I think, my last 2 years of high school, we started having English. But it was just very beginning. So it was, it was at 89, 90. We didn't have like trained teachers. So the people that were teaching, really, they were not like the best, meaning like, they might have been somewhere and speak English, but there's a difference of speaking and teaching somebody, right? So honestly, and then I skipped a couple classes in between, like in high school, to do different things. But, it was hard to, like, so I had Russian, so I had supposedly 2 on paper, but my English when I came to United States was pretty much non-existent. I could say yes, please, thank you, and that's pretty much it. And I remember carrying just like a small dictionary in my hand, and because I literally couldn't communicate. And because when I came to United States, I had for me to play basketball, I had to go to school. So imagine me coming and like, yeah, here are your classes. I can't even read what's on the schedule, right? And I had to go to school. So, but I have to like say that first they put me in junior college because I had to kind of go through like get basic English, and my first classes were basketball, bowling. I had basketball, bowling, volleyball, weightlifting. I could do that without skills, but still was eligible to play. And then I did math, because I was pretty good at math, and math is not that hard. It's all the same if you see like a problem or whatever. So first year, and I took English as a second language in first year for like a year with like international students to just learn basics. So it was, but I ended up living in Kansas with host family, and there was nobody like over there that speak Polish. So I can tell, I had to learn quickly, there wasn't like, oh my God, I'm too shy to say this. So I remember that, and then I have something to compare to, because I started understanding and kind of speaking better relatively quickly. A year later, I brought a couple of friends that were basketball players to the same place, to my team. And because of their relying on me, the learning curve, it took so much on, because I was helping them. But yeah, I mean, I came here and like I said, coming back from being like on a national team, and everybody knew me, and you going places to middle of nowhere with no language. It was tough. I literally cried every day, but I told myself like, I can't quit. I give it 3 months. If it doesn't get better, then I'm gonna go back, but slowly it did.
Yeah, that is impressive. And so you that was your kind of second time you moved away from your parents so young. And then the national team is the top level team in the country. So you're traveling around playing, right, for other nations probably. And then, so when you moved to America, how old were you, and kind of mentally, where did you get this toughness mindset that you could do these things? Was that taught by your parents, or just something you feel you're born with?
Well, I think when I moved here, I have to, was I tough? I think I was, and the reason I was supposed to come here, and I was supposed to come with my best friend. So I was like, oh, 2 of us, let's go, right? And then like last second, like day before, the guy who was like talking about the scholar, she said, oh, well, she can't go. And then I already was like packed, and I already told the people in my club that I'm leaving because I wasn't happy with something. So I was like, you know what? Gotta go. I have to. And then, it was, people ask me, what's like the biggest thing you've done? And like, I've done like the national team, I play for Olympic team, but the first 3 months in the United States, I have to say that was like my biggest, that I didn't quit and pack my stuff and go back, because it was, it was really tough. I just was looking for improvement, like slow, like instead of crying every day, maybe crying twice a week, some kind of little steps. And then, with time, and I think the biggest change also then, because first I was living with like my teammates, which I don't know necessarily if they were super happy that, I came, because I was treated a little different by my coach, because she was trying to make sure I was more comfortable, then I don't leave. But when I moved with American family, which are great people, I felt like, like I had some like more support system, and so yeah, those kind of things, the moving around and no quitting, I don't know, make me tougher. But if somebody will tell me do this again, I don't know if I had the guts to do it, to go through that, but maybe I wasn't like expecting what I got. But yeah, definitely it's something that, I've done this, everything else is kind of, we can work with, so, but
probably your age.
Going back toughness, going back to toughness overall, like I said, go back to my parents. my family or my grandparents, and I've heard stories, went through the war. My grandfather died in the war in Katyn. I don't know if you like the massacre in the, and the stories from my grandmother, both and stuff, what they went through. I mean, and they made it and on their own. And it wasn't like, oh, it's tough, because there was like, they were being shot at, there were, bombs and everything. And then so you hear those stories. So when you go, it's like, oh, it's tough, nobody's talking to me. I mean, it's like, you have a different perspective of what's hard, or what's tough versus, versus what, I kind of, I mean, I didn't have an experience, but I always, many, many times heard about it. So.
And my connection originally to my wife and how it started was my grandmother was Polish and was taken by the Germans when she was 14 to a bomb factory in Germany. And my grandfather was an American soldier. And so they met after the war. But they never really talked about those times very much but my wife, I think that we're very unaware as Americans too. Poland was attacked by the Germans on one side and the Russians by the other side, like right away. Like it was just a intensely difficult time. But I don't want to get that.
My grandfather was actually killed by Russians in 1939 when they attacked and took all officers and Polish intelligence and took him out to Russia. And it's by removing leadership, you weakened the whole army. So he was 1939. So yeah, he was actually killed by Russians, which for many years, because we're under a Russian influence, the stories were you couldn't say that's what happened. It was saying that was done by Germans, Nazis, even though, because we're, and so my mother, first time she ever was able to go and visit the mass grave was in like 1991, because before they would like, no, nothing ever happened here, but.
Wow, a little different subject, but kind of on those terms of an education. Was the education, like the way it was presented and done, very different between Poland and America when you came? Was that also something you had to learning the language, but also just the way education was presented, or was it similar?
Well, so obviously I went to high school. I went to high school in Poland. I never went to college in Poland. I went to college here. I had my brother, my sister. It seemed to be initially like easier overall in Poland here, because, even like when you think about it, I'm like, how am I like going through college and don't even have like really language skills? I get it that the first year was kind of, they did kind of classes so I can kind of move forward. And I end up, being in college actually 5 years, and I got scholarship for 5 years, because that first year was kind of, not a gap year, but kind of, I think, in Poland, when you go to university, you end up with masters. So I think overall, like, it's kind of, the way I see it's a little bit 2 years behind. So certain classes that I had to take, even in Auburn later, and then it was like chemistry 101. I mean, my first chemistry class in Poland was in the 6th grade. I had physics. I mean, it was an option. I couldn't do, I couldn't do like, oh, I'm gonna pick this, I'm gonna pick that. So when I went to like college and I was taking, because I had to kind of check off the box before you get your degree, I'm like, seriously, this is what, so there were differences, and I'm like, at least, and then you obviously for your degree, you don't have masters, you have to go for a couple more years. So there are however, I think now, from being older and even having a child who is almost going to college, has another year, what I like about I guess the system here in the United States is that in Poland, when you go through high school to college, you have to be like very special. You have to know what you're doing, right? You go to a specific university, and then you are, okay, I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be engineer, so you go there, and that is it. What I like, and I don't believe then kids, teenagers here, like at age of 18 or 16, have no idea what they want to do. I don't know if I would like be able to tell. So having that ability here in the United States where you go and the first couple years are just kind of more, okay, the basic, like the base is I have to take math and some kind of economics, whatever, but within this second year, you have that extra time to kind of decide what your major is, what you want to be, which I think is essential. And then even within university is if you are, you want to be in something in business, and then you decide, you know what, I don't think I want to do that within the same school. You can change your major. You might be able to, you might have to stay another semester or whatever, but you can shift like my husband did and do something else. Like in Poland, it's like this is it. And if you're not doing this, then you have to start over and then go to the totally different school. So I like that flexibility here in the United States better because, yeah, again, I mean, who knows what they want to do at the age of 18, you know, and deciding that, you know, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Anyway, so that's
and I think America does a good job, I think, too, of kind of, I don't know, free thinking, or that you're doing more thought exercises rather than rote learning and things like that. Like my wife was the same as you. They had like different schedules, even in like elementary school and middle school, where they change each days and they're doing all these things. And it sounds fascinating. It's always interesting to see that. And so saying that, and you mentioned your husband a little bit, I don't know if that's the next step on your journey here. So you go from college, you're playing basketball in college. Did you continue playing basketball throughout your whole college career?
Yes. Well, so I mostly, so I said, you know, I played the eligibility for an NCAA is 4 years. So I had 5 years, but I was paid because when I signed with Auburn, they knew because I was that year behind. So it took me, you know, the first year to kind of, I was playing, but then I needed extra year to complete all my, so I had 5 years, but so the reason I wasn't playing there because I was no longer eligible because the NCAA rules. I had, you know, I was thinking about, you know, playing and going, I got invited to the WNBA tryouts and I had some offers from Europe, but I did meet my husband. However, he really wanted to go. He's still upset we didn't go to France. But I also went through 2 knee injuries, like in Auburn, 1 surgery and stuff, which kind of, you know, took a toll on, I guess, my mental and, you know, because it's all great. You're good until you're good. And then if you start doing professional sports, you know, you walk away, you get paid, but if something happens, you know, it's just kind of done deal. So I stayed because I was like, I have to make sure that I finish college and not like leave, you know, 6 months early to go somewhere. And then, you know, something happens, then I wanna, you know, and then I won't have what I came from because, yeah, going back to the story of basketball, one of the reasons also I came here to United States is I was very young in Poland and I reached a high level of basketball. I played, some of my teammates were, I was 15, 16, my teammates were like 28, 30. So they were adult women with families and everything. Some of them were, when I was starting up, I literally would collect autographs because they were my, you know, and then a couple years later, I played and then I saw, but in Poland it's different. Like here in the United States, it's based in universities. So they make sure you go to school, you make sure you have your degree. In Poland, when you reach certain level, they'll pay you, but they don't, like if you skip school and want to practice more, they don't care. So I've noticed being like on this big, on the team where my teammates were like superstars for whatever like town or city we're in. And 5 years later, they were ending their career or wanted to play more, but they were too old or not good enough anymore. And they had nothing to fall back on. They had no, you know, degree. They had no job. And going from being like, you know, on the national team and making pretty good money for whatever scenario it was, to not having a job or working in a like store. I mean, it was just so different. So that's one of the reasons I was like, I can't, like, I'm thriving right now because I'm 18, but what's gonna happen like 5, 6, 7 years? So that's, you know, and I knew that unless I go, because I played the national team, the club team. I played seniors, juniors, like a different like age groups because I was young and I was, you know, playing different age groups. So, I mean, ability to like go to college in Poland and play was just like, you couldn't do it. So that was my one thing that I was like, I have to leave and then get something. And of course, if I thought that if I come to the United States, learn English, finish college, when I come back to Poland in 1990, 92 with a US degree, I'd be like a VP of a bank, like just by day one, you know? So yeah, so what was the question?
Well, I've got a different question for you. What did you major in? And Auburn and too, that's a big school, and that's pretty amazing. So that's good for you to be playing basketball there and still continue to go to school and get your degree. What did you major in when you were in college?
So I did business administration and marketing. So that was kind of, I think it was very popular in Poland then. So, and you know, and that's what how would I come up with? I had some kind of college advisor. I don't know. Somebody said it was has the most electives. You know, I don't. That's the thing. You know, I was that age. I'm not sure I understood what I wanted to like truly do. You know, but yeah, that was my degree. I mean, I used it. I used it some. You know, my career. I worked for corporate. I mean, I did something different, but I guess I used my math skills. You know, I don't know. But
I always recommend to my students that don't know which way to go to get a general business degree because, and I don't think it's the best for the world, but business is so respected by every option of career that you'll have. My career in education, like my business degree, is more valuable than my doctorate in education, which is always wild to me. So I think that's general. So then when you graduated from college and you're now out in the world, then where did you go career-wise?
So career-wise, we graduated. So we went to Auburn, and I met my husband in Auburn. You know, so we got married there, and there was a story, and you know, and then after, it's a college town. So it was very like, it's a great time in a town in Alabama. I'm not loving Alabama, but the college town was fun. And but once you graduate, you just kind of have to go, you know, because there isn't jobs. So so we were gonna go to Boston or Denver. Boston was too expensive. Denver was cheaper, but it was more expensive than Alabama, obviously. But I remember people, like I had a couple of friends telling me that how awesome is Denver because it's so sunny and skiing. So we just packed and I came to Denver, and then first just work odd jobs, and then I just started. It was 2000, I believe. 99 or 2000, and then I started working for like payroll HR company. You know, I took some tests, you know, I guess, you know, it wasn't that hard, but you know, I passed. It was math, you know, it was just one of those. And then I worked a couple of years, and then I missed Poland, so I quit, and I went to Poland for 6 months, and my husband let me. I remember that was September 11th when that happened. And then when I came back, I worked for corporate and for the same company for like 16 years, you know, through different positions. And I got, you know, with my business degree, and I added on different certificates like business, like PHR, which is the professional and human resources, CPP, and like just kind of, and then during that, I also I got my real estate license. And it was just how that happened was 2003, you know, the crazy years of 2000, then everybody was buying a home, and my friend's sister was making, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get my license and, you know, do whatever, which I was going to walk away, which I didn't because then I got pregnant, and, you know, jobs with office job provide benefits and more stability and everything. So I did stay there 16 years, but I did real estate because I actually haven't worked full time in corporate since my daughter in 2005 was born. So I had some great flexibility benefits, so I can kind of juggle both the real estate, the corporate, and you know, the kids didn't have to be in like daycare and you know, and after care whatever hours. So that kind of worked out pretty well. But what I did in corporate, that was the question. I did like employment tax compliance. So.
And then did you get married? We got married in America first. My wife came into America on a fiance visa. And then we also had a wedding in Poland. Where did you get married?
So I got married here. Funny story was so I went to Poland, and I was done with with Auburn, and I got offered to be assistant coach in the University of Missouri in Kansas City and do my master's over there. So that was the plan and everything. And my husband Kevin was, I think, finishing up the quarter or semester, whatever it was. I went to Poland, and then he flew in to meet because we're engaged at that time, to meet my parents. Well, I messed up my paperwork for whatever I had. So when I came to Poland and I tried to get my visa, they would not give it to me because they knew, because, like at the time you had to prove that you're going as a tourist or something and you're going to come back. And they said, you finished college there, you have apartment there, you're not coming back. So I got literally stuck for 6 or 7 months. And my husband came and visit, and he was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. And he stayed for like 3 or 4 months, and we're trying to get married in Poland so I could leave. And so it was funny story. So that, well, I guess funny story is good, right? So so he had to go. In Poland they had to say that American, like that he wasn't married. So he had to provide some kind of document that he wasn't married. The embassy said, well, we don't do that. So he had to go to Polish courts to release them from that requirement. Luckily, one of my best friend's mom was a judge, so we got that done. Then he had to like literally testify in front of judges with the little thing that he was not being pressured into marriage. And my poor husband, first time in Poland, he was like, was it 22 years old or something? He was like, oh my God, what is this? And then we went through all this, and I'm like, okay, I like this stuff that takes normally 7-8 months because I knew like a judge or something. It took us maybe like 3-4 weeks. But then the embassy called, and we're going to like, okay, we're getting married next week. And the people said, at the court's like, well, there's a line. We're booked for another 3 months unless you're pregnant. And I'm like, what? So since my father, like I said, was a pediatrician and his best friend was a OBGYN, I came back next day with, now that I was pregnant. So that was an interesting trip for my husband. He didn't run away. So that was a test. So he didn't run away. We still didn't get married because the embassy said, you can get married, but we have 50 files, so it's gonna still take 6 months. So I end up getting, after all that, I end up getting the finance visa, and we had to get married within like 90 days. There is a show about it now. Did you see it?
So then did you not have a traditional Polish wedding then?
No, I had wedding at college with like hardly anybody. My sister was there, so I want to do it quickly. The priest that in Catholic church was a huge fan of basketball. He was on every my game. So he took Kevin and approved his whatever you have to do to be like within like 1 day instead of 6 weeks. And Kevin worked at the nightclub, and so the guy said, you can use this for the reception. So within 2 weeks, my friend was a tailor, she was making like dresses and stuff. So she made me my dress in 2 weeks. We got married, we had a wedding, white dress and everything, and then the church, and we had a party and the nightclub, so it all worked out. But no, we didn't have the full, we're college students. We're like, broke. Yeah. So we didn't, well, I keep telling Kevin that maybe we should, one day go back. Now we're going to have, next month is 25 years for us. So it's maybe, see, you have to call him and send a hint.
Now Zdrowia, yes, we should. Well, I want to tell people about what Polish weddings are like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here.
2 days. Yeah.
And depending on where you are, so our wedding was, and that was some of the first things I went to Poland was weddings, and they're all the same. So Poland, I think, it's not a good thing, because in a lot of ways, because there's a homogeneous group. They're white people that are Catholic, and there's no like buddy else, and so everyone lives the same experience in a lot of ways, and that's changing a little bit now. But because of that, they also go by the same calendar, and all weddings are the same. This is changing a little bit, but they all were on Saturdays. They all are church weddings, which they do. It's kind of a business, so they get them out pretty quick. So they're not long masses. It's about 30 minutes. And then when we would with my wife's, first of all, and my wife stayed in Poland before, the night before, you go to the bride and groom where they're staying, and you go and take a glass and throw it at the door to shatter it. And then the husband and wife go out and clean it together, and that symbolizes they're going to work together in their marriage. And then you go in and have vodka shots, and their vodka shots were like half shots, which I could handle, which was great. And that's changing now. They're becoming bigger, like American shots. But then church wedding, after the wedding, we would drive to the reception area, and kids would stop you in the middle of the street. They'd stop the car, and if the kids stop the car, you give them candy. And if adults stop the car, we'd have to give them vodka to like get them out of the way to do that. And then the reception was like you said, it lasted till 4 or 5 in the morning, and they had a live band, and the band's telling you to either be dancing, and all the men in Poland dance, like every one of them. So if all the men dance,
that's what I miss. That's the thing I miss about Poland. My husband will not dance. He danced on my wedding one, but every time I go back to Poland, I'm like, there better be some dancing. That's okay.
And they have disco polo. They have this music that's easy to dance to.
Like that one, but yes.
and I love disco polo. So they have disco polo, and then they dance, and then you're eating. Hot food is served till 4 or 5 in the morning at these weddings, and you're drinking, and then you spend the night there. They're like, receptions have like hotel rooms there, so you spend the night there. So I will talk to your husband. He needs to give you a Polish wedding.
I know, yeah. It's funny because you telling me what the Polish tradition, because I never had Polish wedding. I don't know. I don't remember any of this. So yeah.
Yeah, you left young. You really did when you were there. So that is interesting. Okay, so then the reason, or the way that I got connected to you, I think initially, because you have now become like a real estate mogul and you're building your empire. How did you get into, and I don't remember even how it was, but people are renting out houses in the neighborhood, and you are the first person that they're asking, do you have a home open? And how did you get into transferring kind of from real estate in the corporate world to then buying properties and doing the rentals?
So, going back to like my initial goal was like anybody else, hey, I got my license, I'm going to transfer and be real estate agent, do sales and just normal list and sell whatever. But when I had the opportunity to stay with my company, and it was more location dependent. There wasn't remote, like I had to go to the office. However, I did work from home quite a bit. So I was trying, I couldn't do real estate full time and then have that flexibility for clients and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna pick a couple clients, and I start learning more about investing or about the numbers, how the numbers behind work. And I'm like, well, and then we're gonna just, we had one house we want to move, so let's keep it and rent it. We went through that crazy 2008, 2003, so you survive that, you can do anything, right? So I just kind of was trying to, fit in a different stuff, and and create, I guess, going back also to Poland, come up with something that gives me opportunity to be in the long run location independent and have some flexibility and not work 12 hours a week, and then be with my kids and having opportunities to take them places and do stuff, so it's just sitting in an office, that's hard to do, even if you're moving up in the that's even worse than when you start moving up to like this position, that position, the meetings, then everything. I work at the corporate headquarters. So I've seen like people like just there 12, 13 hours a day. That I've seen people like from CEOs and everything that come and go because of this and stress. And I'm like, I don't want that, on the other hand, being just in itself, I think real estate agent and just kind of, it's a hassle where you're fighting. I think there's like 25,000 real estate agents in Denver area. So every client, every person, it's like there's there's plenty of real estate agent, everybody knows one. So I just kind of try to figure out how to build something, still do that, and then build something for for ourselves or for our children, and like retirement plan, college fund, like being HR, I also understand all this, 401ks and how that works and why this, and it's really, in the long run, it just didn't make sense to me, just being, when I took money out to buy properties from my 401k years ago, like people thought I was nuts. I'm like, I'm totally aware that I'm nuts and I have to pay penalties and everything. So it was just kind of, I guess, from, create the life balance and create, like people say, create wealth. When I say create wealth, it's not necessarily the value of whatever you have, it's the opportunity, that it gives you. It's about the outcome, not the income itself. So, with this is me being able to now go visit my mom and not worry about, us going to, like, in the summer we're supposed to go to Greece or to New Zealand, where my sister is in New Zealand, the stuff. And, I know you love to travel. So that was kind of a driver of creating something that, it's not location dependent and just being the agent, like, or real estate buy, sell, whatever, but having something. And with the homes that I have, I did angle it also that, hey, there's people come to my house and rent this, typically they end up buying. So if they end up buying, they're gonna work with me because I give them flexibility on their, like, lease. And then if we find a house 2 months in, 10 months in, into the lease, I will change the lease. They're happy. They're like, the stress that removes and gives them, like, they don't, they love it. And then I feel like I'm providing additional service. So I have my place filled. I have a client. So it's just, and then, we keep kind of adding, and it worked. I've done some classes about investing. I love, like I always say, if you're not learning, you're dying. So I do like that stuff. I do like talking about that stuff, or coaching people, or I've done a couple classes in my corporate, even like my old corporate, about buying, and and you would be surprised how many people, like, going into buying a home or something and know nothing about it, or about lending, or how the mortgages work. They know more about, like, how to research TV than that, which is kind of scary. So yeah, I think it's just the obvious security, the flexibility, and family and memories, travel. Like, what do I need to do so I don't have to work till I'm 70 and still enjoy and do stuff that and not dependent on 401k, because I always, or Social Security. So yeah, so that's kind of where that came from.
One thing that I think that you do an amazing job as is I've watched you do this, because we're renting out our house when we're taking our year in Poland, and you were very helpful with us with that, and I appreciate your counsel with that. But you seem to have a really good, again, mindset. I think when people rent out their homes, they're very worried about things going wrong, and focusing on kind of that part of it, and the stressors that could provide, when typically, even when things go wrong, it's a small amount of time, I would assume. And in the grand scheme of things, from an investment standpoint, still well worth it, and has been well worth it. How did you get past kind of that hurdle of the stress that things can't go or can go wrong at certain times, and dealing with those kind of things?
So yeah, so like, if you listen to I had different tenants in different properties, and then I know what I'm willing to take for you look at, like, money parts, and you look at how much time you put and how much stress. So you talk to people, and they calculate the ROI, return on investment, and all these analytics on spreadsheet, and nobody ever puts, like, they put numbers, but they don't put, like, your time, your stress, or whatever. To me, that's valuable. I don't want to I when I kind of think about properties or renting to somebody, is it all about what is like the best deal money wise. Not necessarily. It's something like we're talking about, you know, you go and it's, you know, you create something that, like, I would buy newer properties. I would buy properties in different areas, better schools, and because it kind of comes with a different pool of tenants or somebody where minimizes, if it's a newer property, minimizes, it's more expensive. So, but minimizes the cost of if something breaks or something, you know. I wonder how many times I said, you know, my kids are gonna make fun of me. But I kind of, the bad part of that could come with it. I just try to minimize with the type of property, type of tenant, who is your tenant, you know, who you want to rent to, and obviously different asset class, you know, will be different. There's in the real estate A, B, C, or whatever. And so that's how I kind of manage my risk, you know. So and I do have, like I told you, that I do have people that I can call if something breaks, because it will be, you know. Then I have like some network and people that I can call, and they will go and do it, fix it, and you know, it's no big deal. But you know, saying you live in a house, in your own house, things can go wrong with your car. That doesn't mean you're not gonna get one, you know.
Yeah, and it's memorable, but it's not that often, especially we're in a new house, and so that's been lucky. But I like the way that you talk about that you're looking at it from kind of the peace of mind standpoint, where it doesn't rule you because you're doing it in a certain way. Another thing that I think you do really good on that part, and this obviously relates to your real estate business too, which I think is very smart, is that you're also willing to rent for people for short term. And I think that people are very scared of that because that's a lot of work and getting to people in this capacity, and the turnover can be then a lot of work and that. But it seems like, especially in this market, that there are people that are willing to rent at all times. And so how do you deal with that kind of stuff if properties are vacant or whatever?
So I define by definition by law short term versus long term. By Denver County short term is anything less than 30 days. And I don't do that. I what I call short term or flexible lease, kind of, it's less than like 12 months, or maybe less than 6 months. And you know, yes, I do, you know, I do offer different options, but it's case by case. It's case by case. So I will charge more if it's like, hey, if you want the lease end in December, well, December is a slower month. So I will do that, but that might change whatever the monthly rate is. If I see, you know, if I see somebody wants to just do 1 month or two, it depending on, I have to say, I you know, it is a business after all. So I do look at moving pieces. Do I have any other properties that are gonna be vacant or coming for release? Am I gonna be dealing with one or two? And then I'm not saying that I always will agree to whatever people wanna do. However, since I'm a private landlord, I can, and not like a company, I have more flexibility to see what people needs are, and trying to like design and build like a lease that kind of meets their needs and mine as well. So, and I have done it, you know, I know the market well enough, I guess, and I have done this, then I don't have that fear of what if, how, like if they leave, what's gonna happen if I don't. When I came into this business, I guess when I decided to do this, it's, I always said, and people was like, oh my God, the house bubble and everything crashed in 2008. To me, whatever happens, people always will need to live somewhere. So maybe the rent is, you know, 2,000, maybe 3,000. And as far as I, you know, I build my, you know, I take loans 30 years. Some people say 15 is better. Not for me, because you can always make the 30, 15, but you can't do vice versa. So that's why if I have to lower the rent, if I have to, then I can carry that. So there are different things that I do to make sure that you know, if I end up with vacancy. But a lot of times I don't, because I have those flexibilities. So even if somebody moves out in December, there's always somebody moving here in January. And since other landlords are afraid to kind of be on the market, if I'm the only one or another, there's always somebody who's gonna need a home.
And you've diversified through building your properties that you don't, not all your eggs aren't in that one home. So that's great.
Yeah, we have a different areas, and I have a couple furnished ones, and I can move them in and out. And like I said, I'm trying to kind of have little like different options, so no, in different areas. It's not just in Stapleton or Central Park. We also kind of have some homes in Douglas County and stuff. So
Okay, finally finishing up here, what do you want for your future? What do you see moving forward for yourself and your family?
well, right now, my daughter is thinking about college, so we have 1 year left with her, and that makes me sad. So then she's gonna leave the house, and she's pretty happy about it. But hopefully, the next, it's all about then about the kids. So having find a good college and a good place for her to go, and say with my son hopefully will play basketball. My daughter used to play basketball, but I don't think she wants to do it in college. So but my son is 6'3" and 13, so he probably has to, because he's 7 feet tall. But anyway, it's the bottom line is like the kids finding school for them, and then having with me and my husband, like I said, the ability through what we're working on, have the flexibility to do what we want. Do I know exactly what I wanna? I wanna retire in Portugal. We talked about it, but we'll see. If my kids are in the United States, I'm not sure I want to be that far. But what I see, it's with what I'm doing is it's having options, having options and having ability to, help my kids to move to the right spot and kind of have them just, start their adult life. Yeah, I guess that's where my goals are, and be able to see my friends and travel and, pretty basic, I guess, right?
And have that Polish wedding. I've never been to Wrocław, so we'd have to, we have to have it there. I'll talk to your husband. I've never met your husband.
Okay, yeah, I know. I have met your wife, and she's Polish. And then I wonder if I saw her in Macaulay, because, I've been there a few times.
Probably, and she's 5'1", maybe. She says she lost some centimeters across the ocean. They've marked her down in inches. She said she was taller in Poland.
Yeah. So.
All right, this was wonderful. Thank you for your time. I'm going to stop here, and in Polish, do widzenia means goodbye. So do widzenia.
Do widzenia. Do widzenia.